morning. A little bit different this week. Some of you are at home, some of you are in school, but you're all doing the same task, which is to write some instructions. If you're in year 5, you'll be writing some instructions about your mythical creature that you created 2 weeks ago. If you're in year 6, it will be about your hybrid creature. Please don't worry if you haven't created a creature. If you didn't do the non-chronological report 2 weeks ago, it's absolutely fine. Just spend a little bit of time thinking, coming up with an idea. Maybe talk to the people in your class about the ideas that they've come up with, or go back and have a look at some of the non-chronological report videos to come up with an idea. If you look at the first one, that'll give you an idea. So, how to look after a Minotaur is our first example text or waggle that we're going to look at together. You can then go away and have a look at it on your own, and then you'll have another waggle to look at, which is about a mousekin. So perfect WAGOLLS for you today, because it's exactly what you're going to be doing, writing a set of instructions for how to care for your hybrid creature or for your mythical creature. So I've already prepared this. You will see we've got orange highlighting and we've got pink highlighting. If you've got 2 different coloured highlighters, brilliant. Doesn't really matter if you haven't. Doesn't matter if you haven't got a highlighter, just underline. So in the orange, I've identified some of the features of instructions that I've seen as we go through. And in the pink, I've identified some of the things that I would like to magpie, that I think might be good words or phrases that I could use in my own writing. So I'm not going to read through all of this because you can do it on your own, but I'm just going to read through some of it and show you my thought processes and the things that I've come up with. So we start with our how-to title, how to look after a Minotaur, fairly common in instructions. We've then got an introduction to our instructions. We don't always see those, especially not in basic instructions, but we are not writing basic instructions. We've got questions here, we've got rhetorical questions. Have you ever wanted to keep a unique yet possibly dangerous pet? Does the challenge of training a legendary mystifying animal intrigue you? So we've started with 2 rhetorical questions. Again, not something you'd usually expect to see in instructions, but it works quite well here. So I've highlighted those sentence starters to remind me that they're questions, but I've also highlighted the rest of the question because we could magpie some of those words, phrases and questions. If so, purchase your very own Minotaur from the Palace of Knossos. You will never be inconvenienced by having to exercise your pet in dreadful weather conditions or bored whilst it is sleeping. Now that's interesting because it's almost persuasive. It's almost a sentence that sells the Minotaur to you. But then it's followed by a warning. However, a pet Minotaur is not easy to care for, and you will need to follow these instructions in order to ensure the safety of yourself and those around you. If not, you may find that your baby Minotaur grows to be a terrifying nuisance. Again, I've highlighted that conjunction there. I've also highlighted a lovely sentence there that we could magpie, or we could magpie part of it. So there's our introduction. Then, just as we would expect in a set of instructions, we've got an equipment list, or a you will need list, it's sometimes called. This one is a sentence separated by commas. When you get to have a look at mousekin, you'll realise that you can also have a list with bullet points. And actually bullet points is something that you really need to show that you can use in your writing. So that might be quite a useful technique to use as well. So we've got a list of the equipment that's needed. Then we have another subheading, what you do. Sometimes in a recipe that might be method. You might at this point have a subheading, how to look after your whatever it is. And then we have our instructions. Now you will notice that these instructions are quite long. Previously when you've written instructions, it's probably been firstly, get your bread, secondly, put some butter on, type very simple, very basic instructions using time conjunctions, imperative verbs, but not much else. I want your instructions to be more meaty than that. I want them to have a bit more detail. I want you to think not just about what you're telling somebody to do, but why you're telling them to do it. And that's why these are more developed. This person's decided to use bullet points. Sometimes we see numbers in our instructions. That's entirely up to you. To begin with, again, another good, an adverbial there, an adverbial of time that introduces us to our sentence. So it's a good feature, but it's also something that we could magpie. Your pet Minotaur will roam freely. However, if you train it to respond to a Minotaur whistle, then it will come whenever you call. Despite their poor eyesight, Minotaurs have exceptional hearing, so even if your pet has disappeared into the darkest reaches of its labyrinth, it will hear your whistle and rapidly discover your location. Now, really basic instructions might just say, first, let your Minotaur roam freely. If you need to train it, blow your Minotaur whistle. But this has gone into lots of detail explaining why the whistle will be effective. And we continue in the same way. Next, and again, an explanation. In order to, I definitely magpie that phrase there, because that's going to be a really useful one if you want these instructions to be a little bit more detailed. In order to ensure that your Minotaur is obedient, and very cleverly we've got that parenthesis either side of that, an indestructible collar is a necessity. Another phrase I thought I could magpie. Even young Minotaurs can be as strong as Atlas, so the collar should be made of the finest titanium. Again, so we've got that explanation, we've got that cause and effect. Additionally, another good adverb there, a collar will be essential if you intend to enter your pet in a best Minotaur competition. Now this version has warnings scattered throughout as well. And then I'm just going to point you in the direction of a couple of things on here. You can have a look at this in more detail on your own. We've got our brackets to explain things. They could be quite useful in your equipment list as well, for detail. Lovely opening here. It is imperative that. Really good. And then towards the end, the conclusion, if you like, is a final note of warning. So again, tells us a little bit about how to structure it, tells us a feature, warnings, but that's also something I could have highlighted in pink as something to magpie. So what you need to do now is pause the video and have a look at how to look after your Minotaur, how to look after a Minotaur. Highlight, if you've got a highlighter, or just underline or circle any good features and anything that you think you could magpie, and then do exactly the same for how to care for a mousekin. So hopefully now you have looked at both of those WAGOLLS, you've highlighted, you've identified good features, you've really got to know the structure of the instructions. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to jot those down in your book so that you can refer to them. So we've got our date, we've got our title neatly underlined with a ruler and a pencil, and then I've drawn a table. I would urge you to use the whole of your page for this. I think you will need it. I've only put a few ideas on here to get you started. So on this side, I've made a note of the features that I've spotted. So things like the how-to title, the introduction, the equipment list, time adverbs and adverbials, imperative verbs. I could go on. Basically, a lot of it are these notes I've made in the margin. Okay, I could put warnings, I could put rhetorical questions, etc., etc. This side, ignore my highlighting and ticking for now, I'll come to that later. This side is going to be all those things that I've highlighted in pink, all those phrases and words that you want to magpie. Now, you might go through and you might be a little bit more choosy now. You may think now that you've looked at both of them that you don't need all of them. This is where you need to be thinking ahead to your creature and what's going to work in your instructions. So I just jotted down a couple of things there. It is a necessity and it is imperative that I highlighted. But if I had the time, and you will have the time, I would be making a whole list there. So that's your last activity for this session, is going to be to jot down all of those ideas so that you're ready to do your short burst and your planning.